Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick unboxing and first look at the Vaio Canvas Z, priced at $2,200 US for the base configuration, $2,600 for the model I'm about to unbox, and $3,100 for the top of the line. This is significant because this is the first Vaio computer in the US since Sony sold the brand off last year to a Japanese holding firm. Now this is a hybrid, a 2-in-1 tablet form factor, but performance of what traditionally would be found in a desktop replacement class laptop. So very interesting. It does also incorporate a stylus, definitely targeted at content creators. So I've gone over pricing. Let's talk about specifications, but first and foremost, let me get this out of the box. And by the way, beyond the fact that we haven't had a Vaio branded computer here in the States for a year now since Sony got rid of it, I do think it's a good thing that Vaio is its own brand. This is made in Japan, by the way. Not every component is, but the computer itself is. We've got an Intel quad-core Haswell processor under the hood. I'm going to go ahead and take the PC out. It weighs roughly, I think, a little over 2.5 pounds. You can see we've got it right here. I'm going to put it aside and just get to the balance of the contents of the box. And really not much to show on the packaging. This is really definitely more about the computer itself. And while many will deem this a Surface Pro competitor, there's no question in my mind that it is far from simply that. This is easily the most powerful mobile or hybrid computer ever made in its class, a class which is still evolving to this day. This is the keyboard right here, which is actually separate from the unit completely. It does also have its own charging port. There are some hinges right here that it uses to charge, on-off switch. We do have a trackpad that also is gesture-friendly, lightweight. This adds 3/4 of a pound to the Canvas Z in terms of overall weight. So remember, I mentioned before, the weight of the Z or Canvas Z is a little over 2.5 pounds, like 2.65, something like that. So once you throw this on, you're over 3 pounds. So already a clear sign that you really can't compare this to the Surface Pro line of products, at least other than that they share the form factor of a tablet in common. Otherwise, really not much else, because what makes the Z that we're looking at here today so unique is the fact that it sports a quad-core Intel processor, something that you would traditionally find in, again, a desktop replacement class laptop. We've got a stylus, because of course we have not seen an abandonment by the new Vaio brand, still made in Japan, even though an accessory like this will be made in China, as is the keyboard. And this is actually the first time, by the way, that I am seeing this product with all of you. And I do expect really good things. You can see we've got a tip replacement right there for the pen, as well as a quadruple A battery for it. One area where I think already I can tell you this is superior to the Surface Pro, and don't worry, comparisons will come. In fact, a comparison with the new Surface Pro 4 being announced tomorrow will also follow. This is one area where I know that already I can see this is a superior stylus to what I've been working with basically across all of the Surface Pro generations, including the 3rd gen. But we'll see what the 4th gen has in store. It looks like we've got some paperwork in here and some cleaning cloths. And remember, this is not a Sony product, even though it does still lend itself from many of the Sony, I would say the IP, their patent library, because after all, that was part of the purchase, the acquisition with Vaio. So we've got our charging brick right here, which is pretty much standard fare from what you would get in what used to be Sony Vaio laptop. And even though this has been on the market since May in Japan, of course, October 5th, the launch date here in the US. And a very big welcome for me personally, because I'm just happy to see more options out there. I mean, competition is always a good thing, especially in the premium segment. I mean, Sony was always great when it came to their Z line of products, and that may very well be the reason that Vaio, no longer a Sony company, is launching, starting off with a Z branded product. Right here we've got a rubber cap, by the way, which goes on the stylus. This is part of what makes the stylus, I think, more complete for those of you that were wondering. And then we also have the attachment piece for mounting it on the Canvas Z. But with that out of the way, let's get to the Z itself. I also want to discuss specifications and what you should expect from a machine like this. So here we go. Let's get it out of the cloth here. So I already discussed weight. We're talking about a pound more than the Surface Pro, at least the 3rd gen model. I can't tell you how the 4th gen model is going to look, since that's about to be announced tomorrow. But in terms of performance, I can assure you that no matter what Microsoft has in store for us at 10 a.m. Eastern, it will not be as powerful as the tablet you see before you now. And that's because we've got a Haswell quad-core processor. It's the i7 4770 HQ under the hood. That also doesn't mean we're going to have impeccable battery life. I mean, that's part of the give and take with a device like this. A 12.3 IPS LCD here that covers 95% of the Adobe gamut. This is something that if you are worried or concerned or require color proofing capability, you can have confidence in this display, something that cannot be said for any of the Surface products. In terms of resolution on this display, you're looking at 2560 by 1705, I believe. It's either that or 1704. It's a 3:2 aspect ratio, which is the same as what Microsoft has moved to, at least in the Surface 3 tablet. We'll see what they do in the 4th gen. Now, the Surface 3 is not a Pro model, for those of you unfamiliar. You can see the charging port right here, or rather the attachment port for the keyboard. This is where it will magnetically snap on, but otherwise the keyboard remains independent of this tablet all the time. At the top of the tablet, you can see we've got a lot of ventilation, something that Vaio has, I almost said Sony there, that Vaio has confirmed they've done, I won't say a revolutionary job on, but a very good job at cooling this machine, because with a Haswell i7 quad-core processor of this nature in a body this thin, this lightweight, you do expect it to get hot and loud. And that's something that Vaio, and also at least what I've seen online coming out of Japan, seems to be true. They have been able to manage it quite well. You can see we have 2 buttons up here. One is dedicated to turn off the sensitivity for those of you concerned about whether or not when drawing on this it'll have palm rejection. You can simply turn off finger input altogether, so only the stylus will be recognized. On the left-hand side, we've got our dual-duty headphone jack and microphone, and then we've got 2 USB 3.0 ports right there. One of them, of course, also will give you charge capability. A full-size SD card slot, yet another indication that Vaio is trying to accommodate the Pro that wants everything in a single package, so that the only thing they have to carry is their charger, which is what really appeals to me about this machine, beyond what I've already mentioned about the display and, of course, the processing power. And then you've got a display port and HDMI port, both capable of UHD or 4K output simultaneously. So this tablet, believe it or not, can drive 2 4K displays at the same time, something that I will be putting to the test. You've then got your Ethernet port and your power port, which is a traditional power plug like Sony has had in every machine before it. But of course, again, this is no longer a Sony machine. On the other side, and by the way, this thing is built like a tank. I mean, this is about as dense as it gets. You've got your power button, volume rocker, and then that docking port for the pen, the stylus. I showed that attachment piece. I believe that goes in there, and that's how it gets mounted to the side. But really just a very well built, you can tell the quality here. This is a magnesium alloy frame, to my knowledge, and it just, you can feel that you are getting a quality product out of the box. Now, I can't say that for the keyboard. The keyboard didn't feel like a brick house in the same way that you will get that impression from the Vaio Z Canvas build quality. It doesn't seem that the keyboard's a great reflection of it, but then again, what you're really buying this for is what I'm holding in my hands now. We've got a kickstand. This is another reason that people will compare this to the Surface Pro line of tablets, but I can tell you right now, again, this is one of the few things it shares in common with it, much like its actual tablet form, because that's about it. Some people have been complaining that this is very difficult to close, and that's because, at least in my opinion, it's not meant to be closed with your hand, folks. It's meant to be closed like this, with simple pressure bringing the tablet up and down. So it's easy to open, a little more difficult to close. From what I've read, Vaio did this so that when you're actually working on it with the stylus, it will be easier, or rather hold position more securely for the artist that's actively drawing, painting, if you will, on this display. And they've also done some things with the actual LCD itself, because the pen, I didn't mention, whether a lot of people are wondering, is it N-Trig? Well, Microsoft owns N-Trig, so it's not N-Trig. This is a Sony stylus input intellectual property. So it'll be interesting to see how that operates. And this, by the way, the entire design does look a lot like the Tab 11 from a few years ago, but I can tell you right now that the build quality and internals are the complete opposite. The Tab 11 was, a Surface, that was a Surface Pro 4 competitor. This, on the other hand, absolutely not. And you can see the resistance as I push that. Definitely takes a little bit of strength, and that's why, as I mentioned before, I really believe it's intended to be closed on a table, a surface, not to be cute. Branding Intel Core i7 processor. I did not mention the graphics. We've got almost the best of both worlds. We don't have a dedicated graphics card in here, GPU, but we do have the Iris 5200. And that is going to allow you to game, believe it or not. So that's another nicety of this incredibly expensive and incredibly powerful hybrid tablet PC. 8-megapixel camera on the back, no flash, and there is a barely 1-megapixel camera right there at the top center. Don't ask me why they went with such a low res. They probably figured that's all you really need for video conferencing. I'm going to go ahead and see if this will power up and give you a rundown on specifications. I already mentioned the processor and the display. Any juice? Come on, Vaio. Again, I'm tempted to say Sony every time, but of course this is not a Sony machine. And apparently there is no juice, so they did not charge this. There is a capacitive button here, the capacitive Windows button that you expect to see, and really everything else here is about ventilation. So build quality looks fantastic. Let me put that down for a second and bring the keyboard back just to show you what this looks like when it's attached. So basically just magnetically it latches on, and there you go. It acts as a cover for the screen. And the one thing I can tell you out of the box, as I mentioned before, I don't feel that the keyboard matches the actual tablet in terms of at least the feel when it comes to build quality. In terms of why it's separated, you can see the micro USB charging port right there for the Bluetooth keyboard. The reasoning, the logic behind the keyboard being separate is that Vaio has said that content creators, when they're actually working traditionally with a stylus on something, generally the keyboard gets in the way. So the whole idea here is that the keyboard is not going to block you from working. In fact, it'll be on the side where it belongs when you're actually using your stylus for whatever that project may be of choice. So that's why it is separate. For those of you wondering, you now have your answer. Again, I just wish this thing felt a little bit more solid, but I haven't used it yet, so I'm not going to completely throw it under the bus until I spend some time with it. Of course, I just went the wrong way. But that's the whole package. And again, just really excited because, I owned one of the first picture books that Sony, under the Vaio name, launched in the States many years ago, back in the 90s. And to think that this is where we've come after all of those years, it's, in my opinion, kind of a combination of Sony's original, their digital studio line of AR laptops that were aimed at photographers and, again, content creators because they had unparalleled performance, and then also that gamut coverage, that here 95% coverage Those 97%, but they didn't have the resolution that this computer has. And if you do need to have a color proofing machine on the go, well, this is the only one out there. So beyond the actual processor, I haven't mentioned the other internals. Let's talk about it. In that base model, you're getting 8 gigs and 256 gigs of SSD storage. If you step up to this one that I purchased, you get 16 gigs of RAM. By the way, this is DDR3. And nothing is expandable in these. So whatever you buy, you are stuck with. Keep that in mind. And this is the 512 gig model. Now, key difference, and this is why I went with this other than the fact that I wanted the 16 gigs of RAM, is that the 512 gig SSD in here is a PCI Express drive. In the baseline model with the 8 gigs of RAM and the 256, you're looking at a traditional SSD. If you step up to the 1 terabyte model, which is exactly the same as this, but has 2 of the 512 gig PCI Express SSDs, that is the real difference. You have 1 terabyte of storage at the same speed and capability of what's found here in the $2,600 model. 16 gigs also of memory, so really the only difference is that additional 512 gig PCI Express SSD. Other things you should know, I already mentioned the resolution and color accuracy of this display. In terms of all of those ports that I showed, I mean, I went over all of them already. To me, the key part is that it does have that full-size, the full-size HDMI port and the display port that is both are going to give you that 4K output, and that SD card slot. Because if you are a photographer, the Surface Pro 3 was a great product to have to show your portfolio, to work with. Not necessarily ideal for video editing. That's something that this is going to be able to do. So this isn't all about just artists, but those of you that specifically are working with Photoshop or video editing of any sort are really going to enjoy having a machine like this because you do have basically everything. Of course, when it comes to Wi-Fi, this is an AC compliant machine, Bluetooth 4.1. So you're not really missing anything. The only thing, if you had one complaint, if I had one complaint, is that I would have liked to have seen a Skylake processor in here. But the fact that we're getting one of the most powerful quad-core processors, a mobile chip, a laptop chip inside of a tablet in this form factor, is really what I've been waiting for in many ways. And again, something that I mentioned at the beginning of this video is not, or I highly doubt will be an option in the brand new Surface Pro 4, or if they just end up calling it the new Surface Pro, it's not something we're going to see from Microsoft or anyone else for that matter. Now, when it comes to battery life, Vaio is saying 7 hours. From what I've seen, it's more likely that we're going to probably see something like 5. But that's just me guessing based on the 63 watt-hour battery that's in here and the fact that we do have a real i7 quad-core Haswell chip. And of course, Haswell did do better than any previous generation when it came to consumption, but let's remember, this processor still is a battery suck, no question about it, and that's because it does carry a heavy hand. So 2.67 pounds on its own, a little over 3.5 once you add on the keyboard. To me, nothing else like it on the market. You're definitely paying for it. Will it come down in price? Everything always does. But this is the way. If Sony was going to come back to the market, this is how they should have done it. Unfortunately, Sony didn't do it. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm glad that this is now its own company. In many ways, it always should have been, because often products get lost in the shuffle at giant electronic conglomerates like Sony. And Vaio was a brand that I was really sad to see go. And in many ways, I wondered, is it going to even return to the States? And once I saw that this was launched in Japan, and was slated, rather, to be launched in Japan, I wondered when we were going to get a U.S. street date. So I was really happy to see this finally make its way here, because this is supposedly the beginning of a rollout of other Pro models as well. I know they've also got a Z laptop that I think many of you will be interested in. And the pricing shouldn't come as any surprise to any Vaio Z owner from days past. Those were always the most expensive machines that Sony made, so in no way did I expect that to change now that it was on its own, because after all, even though this isn't a Sony computer, a Sony company anymore, again, they do have an interest in it, some form of ownership still, but not the majority from my understanding. That's why it's not a Sony company. They're still basing everything they develop, all of their engineering, off of that library of what Sony put together over that course of so many years of selling Vaio PCs. 1-year warranty with this, and really it's all just a matter of, do you need this sort of horsepower? You know, if you've been waiting for the most powerful processor in the lightest package ever made, you're looking at it. And I don't doubt, by the way, that even though this is a Sony-based stylus with over 1,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, I don't doubt that it will perform up to snuff, if not better in many ways than what we see out of the Surface Pro 3 right now and many of its competitors. Not that there are so many, because in my opinion, the Pro 3 has things on lockdown. But remember, that's a low voltage processor. Here we're getting something that you would, again, traditionally find in a desktop replacement. So a lot to like here if this is what you're after. If you're like me, if you need to have not only one of the best-in-class mobile processors out there, again, Skylake will change that, but I don't think we'll be seeing a Skylake processor in any tablet anytime soon. That's an i7 of this caliber, a quad-core i7. Unless, of course, Vaio refreshes this sooner than anticipated, which I doubt. And if you need that full-size SD card slot, if you need dual 4K output, I mean, this is the all-in-one that requires no accessories other than its charger. And that's what I really like about it. That's what personally brought me to purchase one of these. Now, how it will pan out, of course, all of you will find out through the course of my coverage and review. But I'm just really excited, and that's why, even though I called this a quick unboxing, we're at over 20 minutes, because not only is this the first machine from Vaio to come back, the Vaio brand does hold a place in my heart. As I mentioned, you know, the picture book back in '99 when I got it was an amazing machine, kind of a preview of what was to come. And Sony did try to push that along, but this is just a whole nother caliber, and really just exciting to me, because I have loved what Microsoft has done with the Surface Pro line. I anticipate tomorrow they will have an amazing update to the Pro 3 with the 4th gen. However, I really don't think you're going to see anything like this, which is why I think Vaio was confident to still launch it a day before the Microsoft event, because they know that even though many people will think that this is comparable to the Surface Pro 4 or even 3, the processor and screen alone put it in another class. Forget all of these ports. I mean, when it comes to expandability, ports, the Surface Pro line right now is relegated to a USB 3.0 port, a micro SD card slot for storage expansion, and display port out. You need a dock or dongles for everything else. Here, everything is in one piece of equipment. So really the best of everything you could possibly desire right now in the PC world. The only downside, again, is that we're working with a Haswell Gen processor in something that, in a world where Skylake is where we should be at. But again, since this has no competing product, even the new Surface Pro 4, as I keep mentioning over and over again, that does kind of give it a pass despite its incredibly high price. So if you demand the best, the Vaio Canvas Z may very well be exactly that. And for those of you wondering who Vaio is actually vying for, it's really Apple customers, content creators, whether we're talking about photo or video production, that traditionally rely on MacBook Pros. This is who they are after with this product, because it's giving you all of that capability, in fact, more, and then on top of that, throwing in that pen input and just an experience unlike any other. I will point out the obvious, though, with that kickstand on the back, this does require a tabletop. So this is not going to work on a lap. For those of you that are wondering, this is not the Surface Pro 3, and I'm sure the 4, like the 3, it'll be an improvement, is something that you can work with on your lap with the type cover, much like a laptop. This, on the other hand, clearly, because this keyboard separates and the kickstand requires some form of table because it's not the actual span of the entire device, definitely equates to less versatility when it comes to its mobility. So this is really not about that you could work anywhere. It's more about that you could bring the most powerful tablet computer anywhere to do your work, as long as you've got a table. And they expect that you will have some form of a desk. Clearly, that's what the design dictates. But again, really excited. That's why you got a 25-minute unboxing of a product that traditionally this would be a review, and in some ways it already is. I mean, this is my initial impression. I've never played with it, so I am really excited and expect an update soon. In fact, very soon. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe.